Word to Karim to start the presentations. Karim leads Espacio Open, one of the major maker and Fab Lab spaces of Spain. Also, the organizer of the Bilbao Maker Fair, the biggest maker fair in Spain as well. And it's just a pleasure to have you here, Karim. Over to you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everybody, and happy to be here in a moment that is also good to remind of the very, very scary and dystopic weeks that we live. You know, it seems like it was a year ago now that we are recovering some kind of normality, actually. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. But basically, our story is probably no different than anyone that happened in all Fab Labs and maker spaces all over the planet, where we basically kind of rose to the occasion and became from one day to the other the largest manufacturer of emergency protective equipment in our area, to try to protect as many people as possible in a moment where there were no face masks. Face shield was just a niche thing that was used by dentists in their procedures, and we didn't have ventilators. We didn't have a whole set list of things that were basically life and death questions at the moment. So this picture that you see right now is an image from our space in the old Wikifactory, where we have the Fab Lab. And basically the woman that you see behind us is Merche. She's a doctor in the health center in the neighborhood of Recalde, my city, Bilbao, in the north of Spain. And I didn't know she was coming. She basically heard from another doctor that we were distributing face shields, and she came at 9 o'clock in the morning with her tub and with a question: can you give me face shields? I'm gonna have COVID patients arriving this afternoon, and we don't have nothing but these face masks, and we don't even have enough of them. We're gonna have to reuse them for at least a week or so. She took a bunch of them. She sent somebody else. The guy that you see on the right, he's an ambulance driver, and basically it was the same story. So what we did is basically reconvert a space that was closed during the pandemic because of the lockdown into an emergency 24-hour personal protective equipment facility, where people could come and pick up what they needed as fast as possible, because it was all about acting fast. You know, now that you see that the worst is kind of behind us, hopefully. Now, the other day I was at the grocery store and I saw this stack of face masks, and even the face shield in a very, very similar design that as the ones that the community made, but now that were made by traditional companies and with other procedures that can scale faster, like injection molding. So the key question is, what was our role here? And it was probably to do the transition between the chaos when something as scary and fast as a virus spreads out, and the time of transition that large institutions need to write their program somehow, you know, because large institutions need a program to run to face any type of problem. And the maker community and the Fab Labs, what we're good at is basically writing that program on the fly to try to find a way to keep solutions. So we worked on the different layers of networks we're involved in: the Fab Lab network, the Spanish network, and there's this specific network that was born during the pandemic called Coronavirus Makers, that started as a couple of WhatsApps and Telegram groups, and it became in a few days a 16,000 people volunteer organization that was manufacturing hundreds of thousands of emergency PPE equipment. And these are just some quick figures from the trenches in Bilbao to give you a little glimpse of what happened. We did around 8,000 units of face shields. We printed some non-invasive ventilation valves for the Basque government and other hospitals that were asking for these connectors that were 3D printed with FDM, and then some intubation boxes and tracheotomy boxes with the laser cutter. Everything started basically from this emergency that we needed to act, and we had kind of like the tools and the expertise, and specifically the knowledge and the the brain power, the collective brain power that the internet gives us, connecting one another to be able to act as one, to try to tackle something as deadly, as fast as a virus. So we started organizing different conversations to research on materials, to research what's available, what's not. We were actually working on 3 different type of material designs in case we run out of acrylics. Everything was so dystopic that we were calling our suppliers and we were running out of metacrilato. So we were also trying to find ways to do alternative things in case we're not run out of it, like with cardboard or polypropylene. And we started finding a way by, of course, we didn't have time to do anything that was homologated or to go to any type of bureaucratic process at the emergency at the beginning of the pandemic. So the validation process was basically having a feedback loop from people who were at the front line, hospitals, doctors, nurses, and people who were actually using us these materials. And what we did is try to keep it simple and try to use materials that were already used in hospital environment and try to improve the designs as fast as possible through the validation process with medical experts. In parallel, we did open a door and a process to do official validation of some of the designs. Some of the community designs actually have been validated. The Coronavirus Makers collective is now very close to do a silicon rubber ICU degree level protection face mask that is validated by the Spanish authorities, and there's several processes that go on at the same time. So one thing doesn't say, I mean, you shouldn't have to ask yourself whether you have to validate or not. Of course, it's something that you have to do, but in the meantime, you have to act fast to protect as many people as possible. So what we started doing is trying to manufacture with the processes that we had. Of course, 3D printing was where it all started, but laser cutter was a tool more suitable for the occasion, and it allowed us to go 30 times faster than with 3D printers. The picture that you see on the left is elder care home nurses here in Bilbao that were doing the assembly. To go fast, what we were doing is basically providing a DIY kit and some instructions with a video tutorial for people to assemble it. And then we started trying to find ways to scale up. Once we had a product and once we had materials, what we needed is partners to make more and more of these face shields that were becoming something that had an infinite demand with very, very limited resources. So we started picking up the phone and calling people that we had good relationships with, like this public artist center in our city, Bilbao Arte. We started calling artists like Tunipanea and Real Cuba, but also traditional companies that we were contacting through the companies association of Bilbao Vizcaya. And they were also very, very helpful, helping us get the supplies needed to finish the face shields, like the PVC sheet that was used usually in contexts like leather press companies and things like that. So we got a bunch of companies, a bunch of artists, and we started acting as a connector to prepare, verify, and distribute these distributed factory that was basically working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Doctors or elder care home people will call us at 10 o'clock at night. We would have somebody at the factory doing the night shift with the laser cutter, and they would be delivering the package. We had to change the process on the fly because at some point we realized that the health of the people that was coming into the space was deteriorating super fast. They were coughing, they had symptoms of COVID-19. So we realized, okay, maybe it's not a good idea to have them enter the space. So we created this quick pickup spot where we would leave a bag with the supplies that they asked for, and they could come at any time of the day and pick it up on car, and we would reduce risk for our people and for the people that would be around at that point. We also worked on trying to build some kind of citizen logistics platform to get the supplies, to get the pieces to the hospitals, and it was quite amazing. Now that I rethink about it, we were all acting as one from different backgrounds. We had people from companies, from arts, from government officials, and it's quite amazing that when we have this common enemy that make us, you know, forget about bureaucracy, forget about non let's say core procedures, and just focus on what's important, getting as many PPEs on the streets as fast as possible. And I don't want to go longer than expected, because I think the conversation is going to be way more interesting than what I'm telling you. But just to give you a quick glimpse, we made more than 8,000 units for 70 collectives. This is something also that was quite unique of what happened here in Bilbao. At some point, the Basque Police Union contacted us, and they were needing 3,000 face shields for street agents that were quite hysterical, actually. And we were supplying the doctors and the nurses and the elder care home. So we were like, okay, we cannot do it right now, but we can give you a template. We can give you a design that you can take to a laser company and manufacture. And then you can do the assembly yourself. So they basically set up a factory of face shields in the union office that they have here in Bilbao. And they manufactured more than they needed in a few weeks. And they were also supplying other police corps in record time. So not only we try to convince people that, you know, we shouldn't say, okay, we cannot buy them, we cannot do nothing, let's just stay away at home and wait for this to go away. But we also wanted to show people that they can also become makers if they had the proper tools, the equipment, and the templates that they needed to do it. And it worked. It didn't work perfectly, but I can only imagine that the situation here in Spain, that has probably one of the highest deaths and infection rates per million habitats in the world, and we also suffered one of the most medieval lockdowns in the world. The situation would have been way worse if we didn't put that close to 1 million PPEs in the streets in the first weeks of the pandemic. And then after a month and a half, let's say that the infantry comes in and companies can scale up production, inspired in the designs that were made by the maker community that kind of did these heavy lifting of the beginning of the pandemic, figuring out which are the designs that were more suitable for the front lines. And then what we started doing also is connecting with other countries that weren't still affected by this pandemic, to tell them to get ready. In this talk that we had with the Peru community in the end of March, I think Christina was among them, and my colleague Nerea tried to make them understand that this was coming, and it was big, and it was important, and it was a moment for the maker community to rise up to the occasion. And I don't want to extend too much, so I think I'm going to stop here. But I really feel that the question that I feel that is still in the air is that what the Fab Lab maker community and the open source movement in general did is react faster than any other institution on the face of the planet. No? So this is something that is super important, but it's also something that is very hard to find a way to encapsulate into a process that a large organization could deploy as fast as the maker community did. How, I mean, if you think about it, 30 years ago, only multinational companies like Coca-Cola or Procter & Gamble could deploy a product on record time in all the corners of the planet. Well, right now, thanks to the internet and all these amazing set of people that are sharing their tools, their knowledge, and their expertise, we have this network of human beings that can deploy without having a business model behind it, basically prototypes of almost anything, which is also the interesting. Probably we will never see another pandemic where we have to do face shields, because now face shields are commercially manufactured by companies who are already very good at it because they already have their networks. But who knows what the next big crisis will be. And I really feel that this network rose to the occasion, and it's probably one of these things that are going to make our societies more resilient and more resistant to the whole bunch of unexpected dystopic things that could happen in the following years. And I think that will be it, and let's let somebody else talk about I'm really interested in hearing other type of organizations' perspective on the pandemic.
That's a fantastic story, and we will be digging in.